Greetings and various assorted salutations. This is the after action review for fall 2021. I guess this is part of the Pedagogy Rants, just kind of looking back at things. What went well, what didn't go well, generalized, and whatnot. The purpose of these after action reflections, they're relatively informal, is mainly for my use. I record them, and I guess I'll throw up some video game footage or something to be running in the background. But I take a moment to reflect on how things went and what all that means, and maybe try and use that information to improve. It's not as structuralized. I won't be crunching the numbers of student performance. I won't be doing any of that. There's nothing really that the average person probably can draw from it. In fact, to be brutally honest, I don't know why I bother doing these at all, other than I like to hear myself think, and recording these is an audio diary of what I'm thinking about sometimes. Anyways, let's dive right in. So for fall 2021, I taught two courses. I taught U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 3. U.S. History 1 is the American Revolution, colonial America, up through Reconstruction. So that means the highlights of the Civil War, the War of 1812, all that stuff where America is trying to figure out how to America, things like that. To be brutally honest, it is not a class I've taught a whole lot. I taught one semester of it quite some time ago, and this is that was so long ago that I just don't have a lot of material from that time, and I've changed the way I do a lot of things since then. So basically I was teaching U.S. History 1 as if I'd never taught it before, so there's a bit of a learning curve. Fortunately, I had some good support from my colleagues who actually teach U.S. History 1 more than I do, so that helped quite a bit. In U.S. History, one of the challenges I think I ran into personally is U.S. History 1 is not a content area I study particularly closely. It's outside of the stuff I studied in college, which was mainly European history, some modern Japanese and Chinese history. The only colonial history I've ever taken is on colonial Mexico, which was part of my coursework, learning how to write a thesis when I was in undergrad. So I really don't have any American Revolution experience. I did play part of one of the Assassin's Creed set in there, but I don't remember which one it is, and I don't remember a whole lot from it. So naturally, there are some gaps in my knowledge, and that learning curve, I feel, kind of made it harder to teach because I didn't have as much depth behind what I was trying to convey. And I won't be teaching it in the spring, but I might teach it next fall. Fall 2022. Who knows at this point? It's too far out to say. But I hope that I will gain some experience and I can use that to, teach it better in the future. So I think that was one of the challenges I ran into, is I just did not feel as comfortable or familiar with the topics. Because they're just not things I studied.
Our dream was to go to
I didn't really study the Civil War a whole lot. The only stuff I've ever really studied on the American Civil War was on the memory and monument building, because memories and monument building was central to the memory history that I studied in graduate school, or at least very tangentially. It was a way of humoring American historians I had to study under sometimes, that's what I think. Anyways, so there's the content challenge there. The other challenge that you run into with teaching U.S. History 1, it was predominantly 10th graders. They're coming out of 9th grade, and they don't have a lot of experience as students. And quite frankly, this is not something we talk a lot about, but it takes experience to be a good student. Experience weighs a lot. Older students often do better because they're used to preparing for tests, they're used to studying content, they're used to paying attention in class, they're used to taking notes. And so some of the stuff I tried to convey it, and I'm never sure how successful I am. I tried to give study techniques, ways of learning material, generic studying advice. But the learning curve with 10th grade students is they're not as experienced in high school learning environment. And that experience shows, especially when you look at the students I had, juniors mostly, in my U.S. History 3 course this semester, which I'll talk about in a bit. So the big struggles with U.S. History 1 is my inexperience with the content and student inexperience with the content. Now the question is, what did work, what didn't work? And well, we know some of the things that didn't work, but one of the other things that really, I'll go positive for a little bit, one of the things that really helped out is I was able to use technology with a high degree of effectiveness. We use Canvas Learning Management System in the schools. Just as a bias, I'm one of the people who trains other staff in how to use it and provides some technical support. So I'm kind of the technology teacher. Yes, it's ironic from a teacher who's most fondly remembered for teaching ancient Civ. But, anyways. With regards to the technology of the course, it ran very smoothly. I was able to rapidly implement assignments. I was able to give students access to classroom resources, in class, out of class, online, offline, stuff like that. So I feel like that was a very successful chapter in there. I discovered, which I had not previously considered, some students do not like using technology. Correction. This is something that they come across. They say they don't like using technology, but they will often tell you that as they are checking their cell phone. I think one of the challenges that this generation, well, many generations run into, is we want to use technology for fun. The work, not so much. And so that was one of the challenges I ran into, is I had this great technology. I feel like I wrote out instructions as best I could, and I provided the best support I could. And you just run into the fact that a lot of people are just not used to using technology to, get things done. They're used to using it to maintain their social lives on social media. They're used to using it to take pictures. They're used to using it to play smartphone games that are designed to be as easily accessible as possible so as to extract money. People just aren't as familiar with technology. We are drowning in technology, and yet many people cannot use it correctly or effectively. But c'est la vie. Other challenges that we ran into, well, successes. Let's continue on that tone. Another success I found is I switched my notebooks to paper and pencil for students. I essentially said, here's the list of key terms. This is your study guide for the test. You're expected to take lecture notes, things like that. Now, some students opted for doing their notes on computer, and I allowed that because, quite frankly, I don't care about the content of student notes. I just feel that they should take notes in some way, shape, or form. It helps with the learning process. Throws in that kinesthetic value. But I saw remarkable success with students taking handwritten notes. So that was a success there. The digital notebooks, the problem with them is the copy and paste culture. You don't need to read it, just look it up. Copy and paste. With the handwriting thing, at the very least, you're copying it down by hand, going letter by letter. And I think that really does seem to help some students. So paper notes, I'm going to continue with those. Digital notebooks are nice, but I think handwritten notes are good. The other thing I discovered, this is kind of a discovery, not so much as I thought about it and I had it in place, but I figured some students might want to turn stuff in on paper. And I had more students do that than I thought. I think some of the students were suffering from burnout from the past few semesters where everything was heavily digitized due to remote learning and all the chaos that was in place the past few semesters. So some students really were receptive to, oh, I can do this on paper. And so what they do is they pull up the instructions on their computer and then they'd write out the answers and turn them into the box. And that worked pretty well for some people. In fact, there's some students that's pretty much all they did, and it worked for them. And quite frankly, that's what matters. It's how we learn the content is not as important as people think. What matters is that we learn how to learn and we work through a body of content. That's something that I feel is more important than the exact methodologies. The methods I use in my classroom are the ones that I feel I can mobilize best for my students. But if, well, that's neither here nor there. To put it this way, if online learning worked as well as it did, we'd have YouTube would be considered a university, and we'd actually have people expounding and learning tons of things. It takes different types of people learn in different ways. My course, I'm trying to tap into that as much as possible. Let's talk about the specifics for U.S. History 3. U.S. History 3 is fundamentally a different course, whereas U.S. History 1 covers a time period I'm less familiar with, and you've got those 10th graders who just don't have the experience. U.S. History 3 is topics I know really well, World War II all the way through up the modern era. It looks like we made it to 2008 this time with the recession in my courses anyways, so that's pretty good. But we're working with juniors and a couple seniors here and there in that one, and it really shows because they have more classes under their belt. As juniors, it means they've passed more classes, they know what it takes to succeed, they have more experience. That's kind of a big detail that kicks into there. And so you see a lot higher success rate in U.S. History 3 simply because experience of being a good student, being a successful student. You have to earn a certain amount of credits to become a junior, and it shows. Success builds on success. Even though you don't want to measure purely on prior performance for the present and future, it's usually a pretty good indicator of what a student's capable of. Some of these poor saps had been in my U.S. History 2 courses in the past, and so they kind of roughly knew what they were getting themselves into. Because while learning the content of history is important, a lot of students will tell you it's also about knowing how the teacher does things. Every teacher has their quirks. I know I have mine. I won't admit most of them, though. That's for rumor mills to handle. Anyways, so U.S. History 3, I saw much higher success. It's also a course I've taught a little bit more, though quite frankly I've never taught it under what I would call ideal circumstances. The first time I taught it was during remote learning setup, and then I kind of dropped it. So I've only taught, I don't know, 2 or 3 sections of the course before. I just haven't taught it a whole lot. But the U.S. History 3 course is probably one of the better designed ones I've built. It has project-based learning in it. It has more student choice and activities, especially with World War II and the Cold War. The lectures for it, I have their video recordings, I have the scripts for it. Typos are horrendous on them, but I have a lot of the content recorded, done really well. That's one of the failures I feel I had with U.S. History 1, is I started recording, but I could not maintain the grade of skill, what little I have, in recording lecture videos, and so my U.S. History 1 videos just kind of drop off the face of the earth. That playlist is largely incomplete, and I'm not too happy with a lot of the videos that I did create. But I think that comes from U.S. History 3. I built it under different circumstances. I was remote. I had to come up with a lot of stuff on my own, but I had technology to support me. And I wasn't as busy back when I was designing the course, U.S. History 3. So I think that helped a lot. And so it's just been a matter of refining it and refining it further. But students seem to do pretty well in that course. There's more writing activities. There's more student choice activities, project-based learning, of course, with the virtual museum. And so I feel like the U.S. History 3 course I had 2 sections of. I think it went really well this year, this fall, 2021. I think I had a good group of students who were highly motivated to get things done, and well, they did it. I can't complain. U.S. History 3 is also a fun class to teach. I like teaching modern history. I wish there was a modern European history course, but I'm not a college professor, so I don't get to choose the content of my courses. Oh well, c'est la vie. Anyways, U.S. History 3 successes. I think the challenges I ran into with U.S. History 3 is I've got a lot of stuff developed and I'm still fine-tuning things. I'm going to be teaching it next spring, so hopefully I can refine it further. Put in differentiated learning as well, refine the student choice activities, things like that. But I've got a core class built, which is really wonderful, because then I can focus, with the entire course built, I can focus on fixing, refining, and expanding or trimming parts that need refinement. And that's a good position to be in. That is a very good position to be in. So, yeah, I'm quite happy with 3. 1, I feel like I achieved the best results I could. 3, I think is where I excelled this year. General challenges and things that I've observed. One of the big concerns, I think, in education right now is there's a great deal of, what's the word to put for it? Pessimism? I don't know. Postmodern. It's maybe postmodern. I know there's some theorists trying to get the idea of metamodernism up and running, but essentially there's kind of this cynicism or pessimism about education, about life in general. I think part of this has to do with people's perceptions of the economy. I think part of this has to do with the fact that the one thing that keeps rolling on and that has changed everything forever, or at least everything at present, disease related, of course, it weighs on a lot of students. Coming out of those semesters where they had online learning purely, where a lot of students did not do well, that was a challenge. Some students are starting to recover from, the learning loss. Learning loss is a big thing. It's hard to measure, in my opinion, but there are a number of students who they just did not do as well the past few semesters when we had remote learning, or we had people rolling in and out of quarantine. And so I think one of the challenges, we're trying to get back to normal. And a lot of people are like, let's get back to normal. And I would argue normal wasn't that great. And I don't think we're going to see the normal that people envision. There were a lot of problems in the education industrial complex before COVID. And it's not like they've gone away. In fact, the pandemic has expanded a lot of those concerns. And I'm not going to talk about them here, because that's neither here nor there. I'm actually going to run out the video to 20 minutes. So I think there's a lot of pessimism for some students. They don't see the point in their education, which is unfortunate, because the thing that they don't realize is when you're climbing a mountain, It's arduous, tedious, and unpleasant. But you can't see the top. You can't see where you've come. You can't necessarily see very far ahead of where you're going.
20%.
And unfortunately, a number of students feel that they don't need to continue the journey, but they're going to stay on the trail and perhaps block the way for others who are trying to make that trip. And so I think that's one of the big concerns you run into in education, is there is peer pressure. Pop culture is geared against education. Smart kids are not well liked in pop culture. Even though there's a lot of smart people in pop culture depictions, they're usually not main characters, or they're seen as being stuffy. And I don't know. The world we live in does not necessarily value education, even though the work world, a lot of things look for credentials. Part of the reason why the SAT, ACT has hung on as long as it has is you can't guarantee where people are coming from, but you have a test and you know what's on that test, and if people can get certain scores on that test, you have a baseline to figure out where they're at. And I think that's what the high school diploma is that a lot of people don't realize is, yeah, you may not use every skill that you cultivate in high school, but that diploma, that flimsy piece of paper, is a marker of what you've done, what you're capable of, and it indicates what you've been through. And a lot of places value that diploma for those reasons. Everyone's education is a wee bit different, and it's ultimately up to the individual to make what they will of their own education. And I hope that mentalities change. Though I think people need to be more selfish in education. Why are you getting this education? It's for your benefit. Yes, society benefits. Yes, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the skills and experiences you have are yours alone, and they're yours to use in whatever direction you go. My job is to teach history. I'll throw in a few study skills and critical thinking in there as well, as much as I can. But at the end of the day, the students who step out of my classroom, I'll never see most of them ever again. They will go out into the world and do their own thing, just like I did when I went through high school. To each their own. I'm going somewhere with this. I just don't know what it is. But anyways, I think that's kind of the challenges that I ran into. Overall, I'd say this is a very successful semester. I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm looking forward to the new year. I'm looking forward to summer, I'll be honest. I like summers. I have a lot of things I want to think about, and I want the time to think about them. So I'll work hard now, do what I can when I can with what I've got, and go from there. So in any case, hopefully you've enjoyed whatever background footage has been playing as I ramble on how things went in the fall. And yeah, that's it in the video. Until later.